Hey, I can't hear you guys.
We say all that.
Okay,
There, now I can.
okay, sorry about that. I'm
That's okay.
also. What we called the meeting to order at 5:34. And then we had present to speak, but no one was present to speak. And we did approval of minutes and everyone in the room voted in favor of them. Did you want to vote in favor of the minutes too?
Yes, yes, please. Thank you.
So now it's truly unanimous. And now.
Note for the record, there was one change.
And one change,
Page 5.
yes, on page 5, there's a typo where it said explanation point 2. Which seems like 12 million, but it's really 2 million. So we'll fix that. And then the next item on the agenda is the project status.
It's really 12 million.
Oh, and I'm sorry, it's really 12 million, not explanation point 2. Yes.
Well, I thought it was just in place of the dollar sign when you said that.
So project status, so we're very early in the year, we're only a couple weeks into the fiscal year, so. We wouldn't expect anybody to be done with their projects yet, but. It is good to look at what's on the radar and think about when those things might be going to town meeting and. Think about what things we wanna see on our tours and think about how much money. Just like if we have any idea of the amount of money. So, or not, so. Can I do this?
Yeah.
So to recap where we're at in this year, we have. A $31,000. Transfer into the reserve fund. That's already happened, yes, on July 1st. And that's just for the regular projects. And then we have a $1,375,000 transfer into the school projects reserve fund. And that is less than what we had started out the year with. We had started with 1.5 million, so it's 125,000 less. And this is updated on the spreadsheet now. And that happened too. And then we have a lot of things. We had planned to do some roof projects and other school projects that are the start of the thing. And I know that Bill is here if you want to talk about it, just what you think is coming down the pipe on those.
Yeah, so the facility study is supposed to be finalized in August, with a plan for public presentation sometime in public presentation meaning not this setting, give and take, answering questions, those types of things, done by QA&M, sometime later September. We have not seen any information, that someone surprised me with it, on any of the new HVAC grant stuff. Nothing has come out, to any superintendents that I've seen yet. The first phase of what was in the, QA&M, what the board kind of identified with QA&M is if there was a first phase, meaning apply for an HVAC grant and do the roofs at the same time, was $16 million between the two schools. And the reason it came out so expensive was because there's a $2 million threshold. And when you cross a $2 million threshold for a loans building project, they start talking about building, you have to meet the high efficiency standards. And the issue with that is then you have to fix more items. More items have to come up to code. So when we said HVAC and roof, they came back and said, that's nice. You really have to add fire protection to that, meaning sprinklers, there's electrical work. They added in some painting and repair work, ceilings, some hazmat stuff, all tied to the HVAC and the roofs. And so that happened for both buildings. The Hall School side of things, Center School was just a drop in the bucket under 6 million, and Hall School was just over 11 million for those two things, and that's town cost, that's net cost to the town after grants, the reimbursement of 63%. The board just got back to me with if there were a phase two, looking at all the projects, and all of these items are online, by the way, on the website. All the draft QAM project items. If there are any items to be identified for phase two, they put a 2 next to it, just with their general thought, like, hey, this would be important to me as a board member, I would like to see this. And so I just got those and I sent them along to Rusty at QA&M. Any item that had more than 1, 2 next to it, meaning multiple board members identified it as an important thing to them, I highlighted for him. He may come back and say the same thing. We'll say there's 12 projects that were highlighted. And he's gonna say, that's nice, 12 is actually 16, because you also have to do these additional 4 because of the standard. So, we're just kind of playing the waiting game with the HVAC grant to see what they're gonna do. There was some legislation that came out that was, one of the things that was holding people up was the evaluation process. And so, they're kind of putting that on hold. And the second part, as far as the HVAC grant goes, is the board has a communication out to Rusty, and he's aware of this, trying to come back for the August board meeting because the HVAC grant is so high, the amounts are so high, trying to come back with a project would be secondary. Meaning, could we do something that would be less expensive, but still get a bunch of money back? Because if you do nothing, you get nothing in the future. There's no reimbursement. The reimbursement would be on next grant. So he may come back and say, okay, so the roof projects are, I'll say, $1,700,000. To try and keep it under 2 million, what can you do so you don't have to meet that next standard of doing sprinklers and additional things? The board has not seen that yet. I have not seen that yet, so we're kind of waiting on that. So it's kind of that phase 1, getting to know what our options are. And then the last thing I'll say is the last meeting, just to have a conversation about what this really means. We went through some bonding information. Donna and I sat and did some really raw numbers from what was used from the school building committee. I think it was February 23. And what we did was we took the bonds and just kept cutting them in half to say, what's the ballpark for what a $15 million bond would cost? What would a $7 million bond cost? And just to give the board a sense of, if you're gonna bond $20 million, what's it look like? Is it in the 1.5-ish million range, or is it more or less? So that was raw, and you have a copy of that, because you asked me a copy. I don't
think you sent it back.
Oh, I didn't? I shared it with you.
I can check on Google.
Okay, yeah, I shared it today.
You can get a link to get it.
Yeah. I can send it off to you, Christina, just so you have it. It's really raw. But it was just to give a sense to the Board of Ed members, what are we talking about as far as, if it's 10 million versus 15 versus $20 million bond, or if it's a $5 million bond, what's the payment?
Yeah,
And what I did say to them was, those are old numbers. It was a ballpark, and rates have gone up. So at least it gives you an idea.
yeah,
Can you share with us when we get that?
yeah.
I can probably email you right now, so. Any questions about any of that information?
So, as a point of comparison. That it's actually $16,993,000. That's
Right, I wrote down
$1,913 for the HVAC and roof improvement that we captured. Or we had budgeted as 2.5 in this current CIP plan, just approved.
And that,
And I think we had a total. Initial wish list going back in the earlier prior feasibility study, something like 17 million, or was it greater than that? Over.
You mean all of the fixes?
Yeah, so that has been replaced by this, which is now in the neighborhood of what, something like $56 million for the comparable total, so.
Yeah.
It's. I guess exponential,
yeah,
which is the fear.
and this is the thing that you're updating primarily is all the ancillary things that are required to go with it, like the sprinklers and the.
Right,
the
that's
sort
why
of Rebuilding.
that
that-
$2
what
million
you mess up,
threshold
Kinda,
is in, we found it, it's in all of CGR, I believe it's in statute as well as where it's written. And that's where you have to get the high efficiency, building standards and. It opens up another can of worms.
did you say 6 million for center about and 11 million for hall?
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted, sometimes when numbers are being thrown around, I'm like.
And honestly, I don't think that the roof projects might have changed a little bit, but that number probably didn't change in that much in the grand scheme of things. We had no concept of the HVAC piece because we've never had the evaluation done. But because there's no AC, the fact that they have to go through that work it's a lot.
In terms of the roof project, could you do one school at a time instead of
Yes.
2 million?
No, because I have to do each one is its own grant application. So you just did the roof project, you could be under $2 million, and you wouldn't have to do anything, you wouldn't have to do anything else. Like the HVAC, but when you go to do all those other projects, you're gonna constantly be trying to stay under $2 million.
And would
So
you,
they're separate, if that makes sense.
if you did it separate, would you have to mess up the roof to do the HVAC?
Yeah,
Okay.
and you'd have to,
That's what I thought.
if you take money from the state, you have to guarantee your warranty.
Okay,
Otherwise, they say, like, they'll come up, we had to cut, so when they did the upper roof at center school. We had, that roof was redone and they had covered over a vent that was supposedly unneeded. And then when COVID hit and we started, trying to turn on a. Unit blower, right there, it was. Non-existent. They had to cut it out, they had to have the company come out and recertify the roof to guarantee that it still met the warranty. So,
Did QAnon factor in any potential structural improvements to support rooftop equipment, any of that sort of stuff?
that's,
Node upgrade?
that's part of the numbers, so he's factoring in a general cost going, depending on what you do. If you have to make sure it's gonna hold that. But they believe it's within the
That's
numbers,
correct, okay.
yeah, and that changes drastically. Putting holes in the side of the buildings, do individual units, as opposed to a major rooftop unit, things like that. Oh.
Does anybody have any questions? For Bill?
Oh, but I don't have it. I did everything on that list, just for point of reference.
Yeah, I saw her.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she's,
She's
like,
like-
yeah. So let's say a best case scenario. That it can get under the $2 million threshold. You'll have an actual solid estimate, you can go out to bid. And you also, at the same time, the HVAC grant process will be open and you can apply and all of that. We probably wouldn't be going to a town meeting for until the spring. If,
Depends on what they do with the HVAC grant. Because I have to have the town meeting stuff done. To apply for the grant. The roof grant is monthly, the roof grant is easier, so you can apply for that and that's a faster process. Just because we have all the data already, it'd just be getting new numbers. The HVAC piece is a different story.
yeah,
And whatever. The piece that's confusing right now, and Rusty was explaining this to me is, some districts that got funding, they received funding for, the first round of the HVAC grant, did a portion. And then they went back to do a phase two, and they were denied any reimbursement on the second round, even though they were doing what was qualifying as a renovation. Because they received the first one, and they were not meeting the standard. There's some really quirky stuff around this, but I have no concept of what we're gonna get. For what I'm gonna call $800,000, because the Hall School roof was 1.2 million, I think. $800,000 of HVAC at Hall School, I don't know what that equates to.
But it's 1/16 of probably what it is, right? Or
Of all of those
1/10
projects,
of what it, yeah,
No, I mean, that, yeah, 800,000 is 1/10 of.
Yeah.
from Hall
Center
School,
of
yeah,
what the HVAC project is.
yeah.
I mean, being devil's advocate here, Bill, because I don't know how far the board is on their discussions, is there any discussion around whether or not we can actually viably maintain these schools in a fashion? You
I
know,
think that's what this. So that's
I know
what
we
the
can't.
kind of phase one, phase two, so what we asked Rusty to do was, now that he's identified this $17 million phase one. To create a phase two of what's important, and then find out if there's any standalone projects. Meaning, it's not gonna impact anything else. You can pave the parking lots and not have to worry about, for the most part, other things. You can just do it. You might have to deal with a little drainage, but you're not gonna impact, opening things up. He's gotta identify those standalone projects. The other part of that is the public presentation, say, okay, so now we have updated numbers. This is what the HVAC, the roof, the phase one would cost community. This is what the second part would cost. And then this is what would be left over. And you're gonna be spending in the, 60 million plus by the time you get to those leftover projects. That's where they gotta figure out if it's worth doing it for the community or not, or if they just say, no. And Rusty's gonna say flat out, you're not touching any educational spaces. You're simply repairing the building as it is.
I mean, I made the argument repeatedly on SBC that trying to stay up with these buildings it's. For lack of a better term, going to be a money pit. It's something that the town can't financially maintain long term. Because it's going to get more expensive. And these projects are repairs, but we're not talking about any deferred maintenance or ongoing maintenance beyond that we're still not budgeting for either. If we're replacing VCT flooring every so many years, that it's a recurring. It's just a recurring cost that also needs to be planned for once we make some of these repairs. How do we maintain them so that we don't run into this again? Where we're.
The issue too is financially. The bond payment that I gave to the board, that was 14, so we had a bond payment for $28.7 million. That was one we got from the bond agents. Got the information for it over the 20 years. We cut that in half and said, let's make a bond for $14.3 million. That payment was started at about 1.5 million. And then ended at 700,000. So you're still over with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, with 7 years left, you're still over $1 million bond payment. So let's be honest, if you are trying to use your CIP funds, that 1.5 to cover the cost of the bond. You have one bond and that's it. And that bond is gonna cover the cost of the $14 million worth of projects.
Right.
Any other project above that. You need more money to do.
So
What was the 28.7 from?
So that was when we started looking at the new schools for the renovation. We had like the new school with, I think we went up to like 43 or 49 million.
Right.
I didn't even do that in the bond payments for them. I just, pulled
the 28.7 was the new school with that auditorium. I think.
I think
That's
payment
what,
is
yeah,
like
but that was a
$99,000.
gross figure, right?
that's your bond payment to, that was what
Yeah.
the town was gonna be paying. After the,
It's-
And then since all that, counting the higher 10 percentage points higher state share and all that, was down closer to 20, wasn't it?
You're still gonna,
22,
you're still gonna be in, but again, these are old rates too.
they're
So-
old rates, right?
And
But the
that
point
was
is-
with, the new, I don't think was calculated on that. I don't think that 10 additional percentage points was calculated on this one. It was at six, I think when we did this one, this was off of 53%, which was new. The renovations, the 63% reimbursement.
Right, I understand that.
But, so, I guess that leads to the larger discussion here, in that there is a larger discussion to be had, because I don't know, you know, I personally can't. I have a hard time, or will struggle to recommend that we put projects, a single partial. Large burden, you know, say it's a $15 million project, just for the sake of staying in that number, knowing that it's not addressing. A fraction of the need,
Right.
it's not addressing long-term maintenance, and. There's going to be hit again long before a 20-year bond is out, probably like a few years later, quite frankly.
Mhm.
And is that the smart choice for this board to be recommending? And I would have a hard time saying that's a prudent path, particularly because. I know we're not gonna be able to maintain it, but also because we're gonna get into the realm where a new school is the same price, you know, or costs less than what we're trying to maintain from a bonding standpoint.
Yeah, because we're not talking about any of the economies of scale or anything else that goes
And
on.
we're doing it over years.
And starting
time,
fresh,
you know,
yeah.
how and the reality is, I'm not convinced without forethought and planning amongst this board, Board of Finance, and Board of Selectmen, and starting to, you know, save or increase the reserve funding, that a single bond isn't going to pass this town unless we build up that reserve and, you know, can kind of cut. The problem is some of these projects are going to come before we're prepared to do it, before they're going to stretch out, and that's another question we.
I just have a comment, if I may, so I was looking through this document that we were sent, and on appendix B, which is page 8. It has qualification criteria for projects. And this is not a project, this is a whole host group of projects, but as we go through this list, we should be asking ourselves these questions and using our own tools to identify whether a project is appropriate or not. And just based on the financial issues, the whole discussion about repair of the schools, I mean, as Jim mentioned earlier, is a money pit. It's not gonna change. It will update it, but it won't change the fact that we're gonna have to continue maintenance on the building and on the old stuff and I understand that, you know, there's a divide in town between building new versus redoing the schools that we already have. But at some point, someone in this town who has some responsibility for governing or recommending needs to say that this is not, this does not make sense. But as a taxpayer, I'm not interested in $60 million to update schools that are so old that we'll have to do it again in 2 years. I'm being facetious, but still. I think that. Well, that's what I think.
We had a walkthrough with, an additional walkthrough with a couple politicians, Tammy Nuccio being one of them. They understand the issue that Wellington is in, whether it's firehouses, whether it's other CIP projects and roads, and schools. They get it. They're trying to find out if there's avenues to help. There's no guarantees, but that's, you know, I've kind of said, I don't know what the magic number is, but unless there's a higher reimbursement rate, this is not gonna get you far. It's, And that's whether it's a renovation or it's a new building, doesn't matter. I mean, you start talking, looking at the $28 million bond numbers. You started a $3 million annual payment and you finish at 1.5. That's where you're at right now for the school project alone. So what other projects, you know, I don't know how you fund the multiple large projects in this town where you're talking about roads, firehouses and schools.
Single big hits a problem, right? You know, it's. Any project, you know, we saw that with the school, we're gonna probably see it with potentially firehouses, you know, any major project. The single year increase is going to be the driver of, you know, it's a hardship to come up that much in any given year. Would, you know, I believe the prudent approach would be to try to increase and ramp up our reserve transfer, build a nest egg, you know, as a group policy. But again, it takes collaboration. It's gotta go beyond one administration as well, right? Because we can set a policy that we're gonna increase an extra million to reserve for this year,
What
but
we've always done, and it doesn't happen.
I just wanna, yeah, kind of piggyback on that, in my, speech earlier, I apologize about that. I do think it needs to be collaboration, and we've talked on many times on this board, and I've heard in town, there's some appetite for strategic planning. And I know that that's a long-term solution to what needs to be a short-term problem, but that's, to me, the solution to having these discussions every single year. There's no doubt, I mean, people who don't wanna build stuff, I get, but there's no doubt that there's things in this town that need to be updated for codes, for safety, for ADA. It's just, you can't argue with it, right? I mean, you can argue with it, but it doesn't, it needs to be done. And as the people who are responsible for recommending and for helping to guide the town in the right direction, fiscally and project wise, I think we have a responsibility to maybe push that topic to people that need to do it, or people that need to sanction it or whatever. And I'm happy to do that because I urgently want a strategic planning committee in this town. I think it's needed, and we're gonna continue to have these discussions in multiple forums if we don't have it. One arm doesn't know what the other arm's doing, whatever that phrase is.
Or worse, doesn't like what the other is doing,
Yeah, I
and will undermine it.
I have the luxury of being on 2 boards, so I know what the other board's doing,
Yeah.
but like, it just needs to be more systematic and it needs to be more cohesive, in my opinion.
He has the selectmen talked about that or not, about doing a strategic plan?
No,
What do you think about that idea?
probably a good idea. Sorry.
very appropriate time.
I know,
I'll call you right back.
the crisis song from
Yes.
Carmina.
Yeah, the ability to find the labor. Excuse me.
Must be an emergency.
Yeah, well,
Please call me,
So,
call me when she asks that question about planning for the future.
all right,
so I guess, you know, is there, I mean,
it was an emergency. We didn't know whether the dogs were fed or not. We don't wanna feed them twice. One of them's getting a little wide. The way the 2 issues I see is either we ask the community to step up and strategically plan. Or we pay somebody to strategically plan. And I understand the argument that you can't spend intelligently without a strategic plan. But finding that money right now is. tax bills go out tomorrow because they should have been out last month, because we had to go back for a second bite at the apple on the budget. I don't think the town's got a large appetite for increasing the budget. And I'm finding that I'm coming to the end of my resources on finding free town labor. You asked for a committee and it's much like town meetings. You see the same 40 people there. Same 40 to 50 people, and on these committees, like Jen just said, she's on 2 of them. Many of us are on more than one of them. Adding another one is probably not gonna be easy to fill, so I don't think it's a small ask. I think it's a large ask, and so that's the drawback I have.
I mean, if I may, let me ask you this, as a group, I mean. I question whether another committee, quite frankly, then having to relate to 3 other committees, you know. Is an effective path forward. But I think the larger need is developing a set of guidelines or consensus. That potentially rental boards as they exist now. That maybe can be codified to a degree, or, you know, saying, here are the guidelines, here's the goals we see, you know. As the committees that advance this stuff, you know, the selectmen, the board of finance, and this based on the capital need. You know, here are the objectives of our 10-year plan. It is our goal to whatever, invest better, you know, more significantly in capital reserve, funding. Finance less, you know, finance vehicle equipment purchases less. If that's kind of the guiding principle, at least there's, you know, that metric. But I think that's something that could just be done with a series of, you know, multi-board forums, meetings, you know, just discussion, getting engagement from all of them.
So I think, that is a good place to start, and you don't need to have additional, people gathering in another meeting. I don't have. Like, how do we compel that? I feel like we have to like. Ask people to participate with us and. Set goals, and I feel like that's almost another agenda item. Like, we talk about the stuff we need to talk about in the immediate, and then we talk about like. Going forward, there's been lots of conversations in this group about. How kind of far out the 5-year plan and the 10-year plan, and how they're not necessarily connected, and I think we can't even agree on that, like that. That's a basis for strategic planning in the future, I feel like, and. I think there does need to be buy-in from the other boards. To have these discussions, to even just sow the seeds for this.
I mean, and that's outreach chair to chair that can drive that participation of the group, right? Or we have.
You know,
chairs on this committee.
I think like with everything in government, with elected positions. You have a very good idea, the devil's in the details. And the word compel gets harder when you have elected officials that you're telling them what they must do, and they're going, I don't report to you, I report to my voters. So that's an issue as well.
How will we go?
That's one of the problems I have with I think we do need a plan. I think we need a framework. But it's like building a building, if you put up the, you know, skeleton of it and then try to build in that. But if unfortunately, unlike an architect, you can't go and say, these kind of bricks are going here. And then 15 years down the road, people are going, why do we have this through this? And then you end up outside the frame.
Where we
So
are,
but we don't even have a frame right now. So what we have to do is we have to. And unfortunately, you set goals and objectives strategically. And in 2 years, in 18 months, I may be gone. You know, and in whatever the term is here, you may be gone in 2 or 3 years. What's the term on this committee? I tried to get off of it, and now I'm back here. It keeps drawing me back in like the mafia. So, you know, committees turn over dramatically. Board of Finance turned over dramatically in the last elections.
So I think, sorry, I keep jumping in, I think that. The framework discussion is absolutely correct, and if we have a framework or the framework is developed by the committees. Who are not going to be compelled to come together, just
Right.
they're gonna do it because of Wellington's best interests, right? So, that. That group of people and that framework can be something that is followed or championed by the committee, not necessarily the people on the committee, like,
Mhm.
of course they change overall, well, in Wellington, they really don't change that much, so. There's lots of people who are on multiple
The
committees
usual
all the time.
suspects.
But that hopefully we'll get some fresh blood and then there will be new people and they'll have new ideas. But the framework for changing the ship should be pretty difficult.
So when's the last time we did the plan of conservation and development? Cause that, to me, that's the
Oh,
closest.
On the cusp of it right now.
The state just came out with theirs, and I just sent something on about that to Kathy Demir, so.
Has it been 10 years?
Yeah, we got a few more years left, I think.
Cause to me, that's the closest thing that we've ever
Yeah.
been through to get to. What a strategic plan would be, or at least what some goals are. And we have some very specific goals in there, what we wanna do, in what direction we want the town to go in. And that,
28 will be up again.
oh wow, okay. So it might make sense to just like go through that and look at the really small recommendations, you know. There's some broad goals and then there's some tactics and things, if I'm remembering it correctly.
My impression of the POCD is it was more conservation oriented as opposed to development. Yes, there was some development in there, but that probably needs, if you're gonna try to expand it upon that format and that plan.
But it had stuff about.
No, it
what we
has
want
things
to
about
do with
Yeah,
schools
It
and-
has things about which areas of town are up for strategic development. It has some of the things
And
that,
I think that, you know, we're talking about committees, the Economic Development Committee is looking heavily into that right now.
Yeah, they are.
So that would be part of this framework, I would think.
Yeah,
and
The nice thing about bringing industry into town is that it helps pay for some of this stuff.
yeah, but it also, I haven't looked at it in so long, I don't remember an example of something, but.
Segments like West Wellington be developed as, the commercial use.
Yes,
uh,
yeah.
And industrial use be relegated to exit 71.
Mhm.
So, you know, that stuff like that, but it doesn't get into it's a
was a-
guiding document, you know, it's more. It doesn't really delve into details of specific, you know, financial specific projects. You know, it's a large broad stroke planning type document, whereas this deals with the day-to-day.
Yeah,
How you can actually pay for it is the conversation, and then
Right.
what you can actually pay for, meaning. Both fails. All the work and goal setting and objective doesn't matter a lick if you can't pay for it. Right, so it's like, what can you afford, and maybe that's all you can do. With the understanding of letting people know that, don't complain about X because we can't afford it, because this is what we have for the bottom line. I don't know.
Phil, is the HVAC mandated to be done?
They've gone back and forth on legislation on having a certain temperature in the classroom, and if you can't, on the heat side. It's, you know, when you're trying to cool a space that doesn't have cool, you know, air conditioning, it's a joke. Anything above the 82 they were talking about, you can't be in school. Like this, we wouldn't be in school if we had a heat wave. I sent her a picture of classrooms today that the building's been sealed up at all, right? It's been sealed up. classrooms that are 88 and 86 today. And this is, we're at 90, we could have 90 in April vacation, because we've had that before.
And kind of piggyback on that, it's not like this, so what people were thinking about with keeping the schools that we currently have for history and they're part of the town. The town uses the schools all the time, so for camp, my kids at camp right now, and there's no air conditioning. And it's camp, so who cares if they get grubby and dirty, but I also had the luxury of being in the cafeteria with 45 kids doing a project, and I thought I was going to die, and it wasn't even hot out it wasn't that hot out there. So it's not just the school year, which can be hot, but is not known to be hot. We have to figure out what our goal is, like, I guess.
I mean, the charge, even though people define these areas, figure out how to pay for the needs of this town over a 5-year period. So, you know, there's a degree of vetting, whether or not, you know, really doing a deep dive as to whether or not projects are validated, properly budgeted, properly, you know, like, and understanding that before they get approved to make an extra plan. But also then figuring out how we make that happen and what recommending a strategy for getting there, but it's gotta. Like, again, I've said it before, like the year 1 and years 2 through 5, they're really all one thing. We separating them just gets us to where we are now.
Right.
So, you know, that's where the work is, and what I will see is pretty much everything on that is going to cost more than what we have captured now. Realistically,
And
unless we choose not to advance things.
I think that last period where we were coming up with the plan, we were doing other things to make it more real as a plan. You know, on this, the committee that's seated here now was spending a lot of time doing that. Changing the look of the plan and the way it works and how realistic it is, and talking about future indicators for, you know, like built-in factors for each year, plan year, of what the aggressive cost growth is versus a flat, you know, thing that we just carry over from plan to plan that has no factors in it at all for inflation or new costs. So that, you know, we had some fracture points when we were discussing that, trying to come up with this plan. That's an awareness that where we're trying to deal with the micro and move it into a macro idea that we're talking about right now, which is what is the overarching plan and what are we satisfied with as a future? I mean, I think the plan of conservation and development is a key guiding point. If my recollection's correct, they start on it 3 years before it's, at least 3 years before it's gotta be sued. So if it's 2028, we're looking at, that's next year, right? Or this fiscal year, you could look at. So that's pretty soon to start that process
We
again.
don't have it in the,
But
if we don't have paying for doing it in our plan.
the plan of conservation and development,
Yeah.
yeah, it should be in
We
there.
don't have equipment upgrades, you know. like-
Right, yeah, we don't have a lot of
So,
stuff.
I mean, there's really the fundamental, like, trying to wrap a reminder on what the need as presented is, and figuring out.
But what frustrates me though about this discussion, I mean, what engages me about it is kind of what Jen's trying to get to, which is. We need a big picture moment, because we're just like, you know, we're spending a whole lot of time on the fringe. And, you know, and trying to keep things going year to year, so the focus is always our financials of year to year. What is the mill rate? What is, you know, what are the particulars of the operating budget? And we don't get anywhere big. And we won't, because I've been on CIP for, I don't know, since 2009. And it's just, we have to move the needle in a big way, not an incremental way right now, if we really want to plan for this town. And I don't feel like it's okay to say, well, let's just do what we've always done, because frankly, what we've done, a lot of is nothing significant. So, you know, we haven't lifted the heavy the heavy weights yet. We're still on the little 1 pound things that you walk around with, you know? And it's so, I don't mean to be a total downer, but that's what we're talking about here. I don't think we're gonna solve it at this meeting, but like, for instance, the Economic Development Committee, the work they're doing on a on a strategic planning is, well, I wanna recommend, first of all, to everyone to go to, on the flea market day, which is September 7th, they are doing an open house for that strategic planning process at the library, I think from, it's 1 to 4, 2 to 4, so it's in the, is it?
I think
It's a couple of hours in the afternoon, but on the flea market day, which everyone is already at the green, but so saunter over and get engaged in some of those conversations. But I'm thinking about, the whole warehouse debate, which we're all really familiar with firsthand and secondhand, and that is, on the economic development end, if you're trying to bring more revenue into the town to do some of these things that are hard to afford without bigger, revenue builders in town, you have to look at the plan of conservation and development, and you have to consider what you're doing and have a better plan there, because I think we all learned with the sentiment of the public here that going to a second exit that doesn't have heavy industrial was not necessarily a great idea. And that's the absence of a plan. They basically wanted to take R80 land and turn it into heavy industrial, essentially. And it's like at an exit where we have a huge bedroom community. So, so I'm just, all that stuff's gotta work together in a sensical way. And frankly, I'm a little bit worried about not doing it, leaves us open for outside interests where our land is cheap because we don't have a lot of that. And in a Connecticut context, our land is pretty cheap here. I wanna know what the revaluation of the real estate property impact is gonna be on our land prices and on our prices, but generally speaking, we are attractive as a come in, blast a hilltop off or whatever, get near one of their 3 exits, cause 69 is not our land, but it's our exit as far as entry to the town. And, and build something big there. So
But the flip side is build something big there and we suddenly have millions of dollars to pay for some of this.
right.
And
You mean
so
like the
we can't have
infrastructure?
we can't have it both ways, and that's what this town wants, and that's,
Mhm.
we don't wanna build anything, we don't want anything coming in, but we also don't wanna raise taxes. And we also, it's just always been that way.
I mean, look at some of the history of Exit 71, Lowe's took 13 years to get that building in there. 13 years of all the local approvals, state approvals,
Lopes was about the same, wasn't it?
and TA, there's lawsuits, against planning and zoning, and
Yeah.
same with FedEx.
Yeah.
And the fight that people took, and I'm sure it was hundreds of thousands of dollars, to be able to fight their way into Wellington. They're gonna say Wellington's attractive to come in, not so much. Given our history of anything big coming in, did everybody bemoan that, the Ruby firm turned into a FedEx? I get it, everybody likes their old farms and stuff like that. They've been abandoned for many years and they did a lot of improvements and they pay a lot of taxes. And what is your impact at your house because FedEx is there? What are you? Probably not much. But so I think planning and zoning, department needs to be involved with this conversation as well, but yes, they have a lot of pressure. Townspeople, let's keep things the way they are, let's keep our open space and stuff like that. And I'm not sure they have the appreciation of the pressure that we're under, the selectmen are under, Board of Finance of, we have no money to do anything big. It's just not there.
And some of what we're talking about isn't necessarily big. I mean, when you look at communities around Connecticut, replacing schools that are as old as ours are is not like considered a showstopper. I mean, other towns around us nearby, in our basic economic category are doing it comfortably. Or at least it's not stripping
I think
gears.
comfortably is a strong adjective.
Well, I think Stafford did a pretty good job and they're, you know, I mean. I think they did a pretty good job. I
Hmm.
mean, where they built a campus. You know, and with a public library and everything. What?
Reimbursement rate and tax base, I mean, that's. What it comes down to.
In terms of trying to get money back into the general reserve. Let's pretend for a moment we went up $500,000 on CIP and put that into the general reserve. How well could we still fund, you know, Village Hill Road, the Lisco Road Bridge, the firehouses, you know, pretty much anything above $1 million,
Mhm.
putting $500,000 in the general reserve. You're barely keeping up with what we have, let alone trying to do the big projects.
Right, we need to
How long has
increment,
Village Hill been on the CIP plan? 30+?
30+ years.
and it sounds like it's twice the price of what we have a captured for.
Yeah, I mean, we never even had a real number in the first
No.
place, but
Which
it's
is
never even.
where I was gonna move on to, getting into a little bit of the nitty gritty. Next month, I'm gonna find out what it's gonna cost us to get that $2 million. And we may have to break our plan into 3 parts. And do the parts that we can, do something. The state's gonna give us $1 million, at least we could do the tie-in part at the bottom, so that when the water does get directed, we have a place to direct it to. And get somebody else to pay for that, so,
When you say tie-in.
the water coming off of. Village,
Schofield?
the water coming off of Schofield, they want to pump uphill a 1/4 mile before we drop it into the Willimantic River. And that didn't quite make sense to me, so we're looking at the plan to see if we can, the tie-in around Route 32 and into the Willimantic River and spraining pollutants and all that kind of stuff. Just that part at the bottom is big money. So it's like, you have a faucet and a drain, and you can you can't get the whole sink together, but if you can get the drain done, then when you have a faucet, you can have some place for it to drain out so it doesn't fill up your house. That's essentially what I'm looking for. One of the roads we may be able to do, and the other one, we can do a part of it, and so, but I wanna get something done. I mean, we haven't done anything for 30-something years.
Do you understand the grant? Like the.
I don't, and that's what we need to, we're meeting with those people next month, and until I meet with them. The other thing is that we have, animal control issues. The Department of Agriculture changed the, requirements of a dog pound. And we're looking, according to this is a number given to me by the Department of Ag, we're looking at a minimum $100,000 to bring our dog pound up to state standards. 100,000, yeah, and I just was talking to Talland, and we may be able to enter into a regional. Where. We go to a regional animal control, they've just gotten $1 million something bucks to build a new. Animal control facility, and if we. Brian has offered that if we tie in half of whatever the town section is on the LoCIP grant, we'll own half of it, so. We have some details to work out on who the people are. But if you have your own facility, you have to have your own people there to take care of the facility. And as we found, even if you don't have dogs in the facility, you gotta have people working there all the time because the stored dog food filled up with mice and rats, and we had an issue. So then we had to vacuum the leavings of the mice out of the heating system, which caused the furnace to have a problem. So, you know, you can't even have an empty building without a significant cost. So we gotta figure out something to do. They require so much of every one of the towns, and there's 169 towns. You don't need 169 animal control agencies. This isn't a big enough state for that.
Did you say, would it be just a partnership with Tallinn? Would we be the only partners?
We're not sure about that yet, because Bill Morrison was at the meeting, so we may be going in partners with Stafford as well. So, we haven't figured it out yet. There's a lot to go here, but I think it's an idea moving in the right direction, but we may need $100,000 to put in for our portion of that, to own half of $1 million facility.
So, I mean, well, and that's the big concern. We talked about big picture items,
Yeah.
but unfortunately, we have a number of items that really aren't gonna wait for big. You know, so-
They're like
So there's
animal
that.
control,
Premier
we're
animal
required to have
control,
animal control.
Plan of conservation and development, we don't have captured yet. There's plenty of field equipment. What was the other one? The road improvements.
The road
We have
improvements.
captured like 2.7 for those projects to get the grant, but I think. Based
Right.
on what I got, based on what I understand from the grant application, they were valued at 4.5.
Right, but
So-
so instead, but what I'm saying is,
Yeah.
if they give you $2 million and you have a $4.5 million project. Now you do half the project and you use the money that they're giving you to
Yeah,
do
well-
it, and then you come up with the other 2 million later to figure that out.
But
That's
does
why
it
I asked about the
require-
requirement.
but
does it
They're gonna
require
require
public
a full
input?
project.
Well,
Is the question.
right, that's a good question, it's a damn fine question, but if you turn your one project into 3 projects and you can complete 2 projects.
Yep.
That's my goal there.
What did you ask, Jim?
No, just the importance, of understanding is that we're not gonna get the full 2 million without commitment that the town is gonna pay for a realistic project. So if it's
Right,
$1 million in grant, we're still gonna have to put up $1 million, so.
yeah, I don't think it's a,
I
I
don't
don't
know
think
if
it's a
that's the breakdown,
50/50
I'm hypothesizing,
breakdown, I think it's more like we put in 10%, so
That would be even better.
that would be a lot better.
But, and that's the reality. I know the fire departments do, you're on that committee, right?
Yes.
I've been following along, but you guys haven't really, you're starting to address the critical need for Station 13.
Right now,
But you're looking at, again, costs to bring a new temporary facility on that, which will be either a CIP item or a Board of Finance approval or something out of general reserve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then there's that,
and I think
is
it's
it a long-term fix?
essential no, it's not a long-term fix,
So-
but essential to all of this is making sure that we're not, the easiest thing for a government entity to do is to leverage the people that they can leverage. If we tell people to pay taxes and they vote in the budget, we can go and ask people to pay their taxes. We're trying to set that level at whatever level that is that the taxpayers are willing to. What we need to do is we need to be going out and finding alternate funding sources as well. That's essential to this whole project, is going out and talking to these Tammy Nuccio, and I can't remember that other legislator's name.
Jim.
Jim Gordon?
No,
No, it was one of the state reps. Jeff was not there.
Jeff wasn't able to make it, but the lady in charge of the education committee showed up.
Yeah.
So what you have to do is it's a lot of work to go out and ask these people for money when you can't make them give you money.
One thing that, I don't know, I just thought of this, that we could do, just as a starting point, is to ask each of the boards that submit, requests to us. And even some ones that should be submitting requests that haven't been, for whatever reason, but asking them to just do a really top, very, very quick thing. And have put on their agendas to talk about what they think should happen from their board's perspective in the next 10 or 20 years. And then give it to us and we can compile it and at least say, okay, so emergency services is thinking this. And they're thinking it's, they're gonna want this and this and this. Planning and zoning is thinking this and they're gonna, and at least we'll have something like that. But, all we can do is ask them to do it, but I don't mind asking them to do that. I don't know, do you think that would help?
I think that's a great idea, and, it starts the conversation in multiple areas, not just here and the other couple boards. Yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah.
Would we guide the conversation as far as continuity, like if we have all of these boards handing us things that look very, very different?
Yeah, and I think the simpler the better.
Yeah.
For everybody, but. And we can do it as a Google Doc, with just 3 questions or something like that, that they have to answer. And then
About their big ticket.
About,
You know, hopes and
about
dreams kind of.
maybe their vision. What their big tickets are, and when they think that those things need to happen.
And it would be helpful to have an understanding what the urgent priorities are,
Yeah.
and then what their longer
Yes.
range goals are, so we can at least.
Yeah,
You know, have a conception, because we don't, again, that's getting that equipment replaced, the vehicle inventory lists from the fire departments, for example. I'm using it just because we haven't had it. And understanding that, okay, 15 years from now, we may need another, whatever.
Right.
Another major
$1.5 million.
$1.5 million piece of equipment.
Mhm.
We need to have we need to basically have a healthy balance. We gotta get this thing above water first.
right,
As a part of this, while also still addressing priorities that are gonna come before 5 years ago. Or we're gonna spend money or do nothing. And Station 13 repair $1 million is what's gonna happen. You know, like it's. Those are the decisions, and that's the reality of it. If we don't start planning this year.
You know, you think, you know, worst case scenarios at some point, where the schools, you put on a roof and you stop. That's all we're doing, live with it for 20 years, don't put any HVAC in the place. And, well, you paid for the roof, you got through it. But, you know, is that the level that the townspeople want and, you know, the students deserve? Kind of thing, you know, for public works, you know, the dump truck guys, man, too bad you don't get another one. Move away, you got it, but how far down the hole can we crawl and, you know, still be an attractive community for everybody to live here?
The other thing is that the state is. I just learned of this mandate, you probably already heard of it, the hazard. Something reimbursement,
Yes,
hazard
So-
mitigation.
yeah, so that if a hurricane comes through and tears up our town. The state will reimburse us for that, but they won't reimburse us unless we sign. An agreement saying that we will mitigate some of our hazards.
Right.
And we have some of those hazards on the list. That I know we've been talking about for long term. For instance, we don't have a generator on this building to the best of my knowledge. And one of the things on our hazard mitigation list is this building will have a generator. You know, it's one of those things. There's a dam someplace that I didn't even know we existed in town, that if we don't do something about it, we're not mitigating that hazard. We've got a whole list of these things that we should be working towards.
Well, and that's a critical, to your point, with the question of requirements, that's a
Yeah.
critical, like what? The library comes to mind as things that are gonna need, you know, additional work that I know isn't identified on here, but same thing with that, like what do you see coming down the pipe? Rest, I guarantee you there's a lot more on it.
Well, yeah, I
You
mean,
know,
I
yeah,
just looked at the Old Town Hall, that's gonna need to be painted again at some
Again.
point soon.
Mhm.
And that's a lot of money.
And that project is holding up another project, so. For instance, I wanted to enter into the contract, into. Discussions with Holland on that animal control facility, but because we're entering into it with them, we have to be. Eligible for steep grants, and we can't get a steep grant because now. The Old Town Hall steep grant is over 4 years old, so they won't give us another steep grant until that project's completed. And right now I'm fighting with
I don't blame them,
the health district because,
spend the money we get.
right, because we have to. Go from town property, crossing a line into town property.
Mhm.
And they want to make sure we have an agreement with ourselves to deal with that, but it's gotta be a legal document, and so that's held us up for 2 weeks already.
So do we have a similar issue with the salt shed? Is that steep grant money?
That we never, I don't know where that
was
is.
on your list of things to follow.
Yeah, I
think.
That's that leftover money from Turnpike Road that they
All right.
said we could use for this.
all right, was that steep money or was that something else?
Yeah, yeah,
They might be getting that back, I don't know.
yeah,
But I mean, if.
I know.
again, Taking the big picture projects out of the line, we still need to, like, this plan needs a healthy balance sheet
right.
for things like.
And one of the things that I
Now we can't do anything else.
never heard on CIP is our Boy Scout Hall, which is a town building. which
Right.
I didn't know it was a town building until they ran out of oil. That, got kind of overgrown. I've had Public Works cut the brush back, but that just reveals the amount of help that building needs as well. So,
Because they haven't requested anything.
no,
The Boy Scouts, I don't think have brought it to the town's attention.
no, they haven't, but it
So
came to
what-
my attention because I had to deal with it,
Yeah,
so.
but now there's a lot of good
So
first
it's not
maintenance.
a-
Yeah.
Yeah,
Facilities manager would catch it on that before it becomes a big problem.
Well, you know, it's,
I know.
if you have somebody in the building, you'd hope that the person standing in the building could look around and go, we got a problem.
yeah.
Hey, pardon me, we got a problem, you know?
But haven't the scouts sort of,
The scouts are coming back.
okay,
But will they have someone who understands how to take care of that building? Will they actually?
The guy they have right now probably does, we just need to have discussions. And and the Cub Scouts are making a comeback too, so.
I just wanna say one thing, so we talked about a whole mess of stuff tonight, and I'm not even sure where we are. I feel like if we are going to take this on as a committee, the piece of it, that, you know, forward planning as opposed to just staying in the weeds where we are. From my perspective, it makes sense to have some kind of, like, if we end a meeting, we have a goal for the next meeting, and it's an achievable goal that we can just keep moving forward, because we could sit here for the entire year and have this exact same conversation, and we have.
Right.
And I feel very strongly about moving this piece forward and making some progress. I feel like if we are able to do that, then we have something to show folks in town. Like,
Yeah.
this is what we're doing. This is what we are working on for our collective good. Like, please help or participate or whatever.
Just occurred to me from what you said, is that I think we need this planning document because we're not getting projects from our committees and commissions. Because they're going, you want a price, a dollar amount, you want a year when I need it, you need all this information to plug it into your plan. I know I've got a problem, I know there's no money, I just want it on that background document for where we're building out to.
Right,
So, right now, I wouldn't put that Boy Scout hall on my CIP request, cause I know there ain't any money for it. I'm gonna have to dig hard for steep or state money or something or get the Boy Scouts to, kick in something. I'm gonna be looking for that, but it's a project this committee should know about. And it's those kinds of projects that we should be searching out to figure out where our issues are.
That's
that's a really
big
good point.
gaping hole.
Right now, nobody will tell us their issue unless they have some kind of, money amount and timeframe.
So,
well, not for nothing, there's been, years of pattern where they do all the work, they get all the projections, and we have to move
Right.
it, cut it, whatever, or it gets cut in the end game.
But if I'm gonna submit something I know is gonna get cut, I'm not gonna submit it. So,
Exactly,
but you need, if I could give you that outline, say, I have no idea what this is gonna cost. I have no idea when it's gonna need to be done, but it's gonna need to be done. We're not getting that feedback.
so maybe it
And
gets
like
its own
your
color
property manager,
Right,
as a property manager, I wouldn't tell you that because I know it's not gonna happen.
So the sort of ghost of a chance column.
The
in
ghost of a
CIP
chance,
plan.
you know,
But
I
still
can
important,
foresee
yeah.
an upcoming problem, I just don't know how big the problem is or when it's gonna
Yeah,
happen,
no, I
but it's
hear you.
gonna happen. I was just told about the air conditioners in this place that have to be replaced next time because we've got illegal, coolant in them. Their refrigerant is, yeah, the EPA is not happy. So but you can't put new refrigerant in the old one because it won't work either, so you gotta replace the whole
Like
shebang.
brain eating kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, no, I think it's ozone destroying stuff, but it's, it has to be, you know, my current building manager, Troy, says 5 years. That's the end of the
So-
So
story.
we're in data gathering, is it
Yeah.
really
Right.
aggressive data gathering,
Yeah,
essentially.
so how about this, how about we plan to meet in a month from now, whatever that.
August.
Yep, August, the third week of August, we're gonna meet again, and by then. And then in the next 2 weeks, if all of you guys could send me whatever you think good questions would be, I'll try to draft something that we can
That's,
look at.
that's where I wanted to go, is where
Yeah.
Christina drafts something.
Yes, I'll draft something for us to
Are
look
you
at,
talking about to send to the boards and
Yeah.
committee? Okay.
yeah, so.
Suspenders.
So the next meeting, we'll actually have something we can look at and decide, like, yes, it's good. And then, try to get the support, like, hopefully you could get the selectmen to get behind that idea.
Right, right,
And,
I-
we'll get it out.
What was the 14th?
Is that the
That's,
third?
well, it's 4 weeks from now.
Yes, okay,
It's
yes,
the second week technically, well, the first is a Thursday, but it's the second Wednesday. And
See that?
I mentioned that because I have to do it next week.
okay,
They've all been scheduled.
yep, the only thing I'll I'll be at the pink concert. Yeah, so the 14th.
I won't be here.
No.
I can get you my stuff.
Okay.
Advance and.
Okay, does that sound like a good plan to everybody?
Yeah,
There are other,
I think that would be
I mean, there's other low-hanging fruit
actually
we
more
can
important
introduce
than-
to the
and-
vehicle
and,
replacement schedule, just understanding.
I'd
Yeah.
offer to read my grant record.
I'm happy to kind of.
So.
start
Yeah,
that too.
yeah,
That's not
yeah.
long.
I'm also happy to help you address
Okay, great.
questions that might
Adding personnel.
garner responses that are useful
Get
from
something to win.
groups that may or may not
Well, right, well,
be
that's
aware of what to ask. You know,
Right.
what.
Right, I think there's gonna be a lot of,
Grant writer,
confusion,
she's working now.
or we just need to get over what Pete was just describing.
Yeah.
I think that is a thing.
Christina, years ago, when the schools hired MCOR to come out and do the books for both
Yeah.
schools and all the mechanical equipment. That might not be something, that could be something for the, I mean, I would hope if someone had done that for the town, they'd look at a code on. And they see you to hear and go, uh-oh. But it basically just said, it identified all the, it's simply mechanical, it's not everything. But it identified all your mechanical items, expected life expectancy. What you should be doing for preventative maintenance, which is what we do now. For our items, and then estimated replacement cost. And that might be something for your heating system in the old town hall, heating and cooling gear.
How recent was that, Bill?
That was done in like the, I wanna say 17, 15, 2014.
Yeah, I mean, that's a helpful start, and it's a very helpful reference for like, reference document in lieu of having somebody townwide that really coordinates that, you
Right.
know, that understands
It helped
that
us.
equipment schedule.
It was the beginning and end, there was a cost to it, and at least you knew, like, you didn't have to go, hey. I didn't know anything about the boiler at Center School, as I was principal, I'm going down going, we have one boiler, you know. I can write down the name up for it, but they were writing the serial numbers, can you get replacement parts for it? That's. Good information, and if you had at least some of that, it could help you. Think about,
Yeah,
there's a cost to it. But at least you would walk away knowing, we have all, at least we have identified all the mechanical equipment in town.
Yeah.
Was it townwide?
No, it
No.
was just school wide. It was the schools.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's the catch, is garnering that information without cost.
Right. right, I mean, we could. So everybody should be able to figure out, how old is my roof, how old is my boiler? But maybe not.
I'm afraid that's gonna wind up being very optimistic. in
Yeah.
some cases.
Well, I think that that's.
Yeah.
Just because they can't do it or don't know, that doesn't mean they. That. Ask the
We can
question.
ask, and just get the people to start thinking about.
Do you
all these
need
things.
help figuring that out?
Yeah, that's another question.
That- Yes.
If yes, ask Phil,
Uh,
I know too much about this.
as you do.
Donna, do you have CIP records going back 10-20 years?
They're on the
There's
website.
a bunch on the website.
You might see some replacements of things like Lincoln Hills new furnace that they got, I think this past year, or, the roof at our south station, I think was done when Mike Eldridge was around, that's been a lot, 4 selectmen ago. Do I remember what year it is? No, but if I could look to say, oh, we spent $100,000 on the roof down there, at least we pick up on the date and
So
who did it and stuff like that.
how do we validate that those projects are actually completed and that they didn't just drop off the list?
There'd be money expended on,
Yes, money expended.
Well, that would be in the CIP list.
it's not the CIP plan,
The
it
plan.
would be in the financial records of maybe the different vendors of.
Yeah,
So you would take some searching, I suspect, but you know. Each department head look up a little bit on that of. When did we buy it, how much did it cost then? And take the well, throw the dirt at the wall, what does it cost now?
Yeah, I mean, the questions are a good start though, and there's another reason here to understand,
yeah,
maybe we're missing something. you
Yeah,
know, and
it's-
There's gonna be follow-up.
yeah, we're gonna see a lot of holes, but.
Is there also, is there an element that sort of puts them in a category for public money? For instance, is the Boy Scout building is
In town
historic?
building,
Hello,
It's
it's
all-
historic, isn't
yes,
it?
yes, it is.
Okay, so has it flagged enough that it's not in line for anything
I
that
don't-
could be akin to historic money? Because and it's on the green, right on,
Right.
you know.
So historic.
Well, that was one of the things, the issues was, we had to promise that we weren't gonna sell the green. I thought that was, likelihood of that was small. Although it would make nice apartment buildings right there.
Since we have the members from the two boards that have kind of the biggest ask currently, can we get a sense of schedule? If we thought you're gonna have a final plan, you're hoping voted on by August, or at least a final report.
Final report.
The board's gonna have discussion, you know, on what they're recommending or ultimately what you're gonna hope to advance.
Which will be part of the final report, because they're helping. QA&M helped identify a kind of a phase one based upon board feedback, which was really around the roofs and the HVAC.
Yeah.
And then the second portion is what I just gave him, he actually just emailed me back. So their feedback will be in kind of the first two phases. And he'll add in his professional feedback, say, you guys missed this because you don't see it as important, but it actually impacts X, Y, and Z. He'll add those things in and share that. I think what's gonna be most important is when he comes to do a public presentation, it can't be in this room. And it's gotta be people coming out to hear what the issues are, so people know. We're not necessarily asking for the funding right now, but there's $50 million worth of issues. And there's a lot of people that think they're not real. And they are. And two separate firms who are leaders in the state and this region of the country. One is national or international. They've identified the issues. It's not the Board of Ed, it's not Phil. And the taxpayers need to understand that and then start identifying. What do we value and what do we want to do? If you ever want to get in one building, here's what you gotta do. Otherwise, you're gonna be two buildings forever. Now, you're gonna put just a roof on and call it a day and clap your hands and throw the plan away, that's up to the taxpayers. But they don't have that information. It is the same 40 people as Pete said at the town meeting. It's pretty much everybody in this room. It's the same 40 people that, you know, ask questions or send us emails. We have to get the townspeople engaged somehow, so there's some feedback. And there's support for whatever is going to be put forward. Even if it's just a portion of it, at least you know.
Where would you do that? meeting, I mean, to get a bigger.
In a bigger space, we need,
Yeah.
you know, either the library space, cause it's AC, or. We potentially, we just moved the library around a hall, which has AC, we might be able to fit more people in that space. Than, in the public library room. I think the gym is just. Acoustic stink, I think it's hot there really
Yeah.
fast.
That'd be the reason to have the meeting there.
I agree.
The library actually, so you can see you know, what's beautiful in that room and what's absolutely ugly. It's also another good space, but I just think timeline for the board and the big picture of things is. 15, 16, 17 million dollars worth of projects don't matter, if it's not gonna be supported. Number one, it's gotta be a bond, right? And is the town gonna support a bond, and if you do bond, is everything else going away, like that stuff falls away from the Board of Ed. They can make a recommendation to you, say this is what we want phase one, and then it's on you to figure out how to pay for it.
Yeah, I'm really just trying to, like, we're gonna have data, I guess, that we'll be able to use earlier, you know, rather than. We have giant placeholders in 3 weeks to just, you know, determine things last year, because the process just starts late. But the goal here being, you know, how do we schedule this so that we can get. Data, we get this average now, you know, to departments, so at least we know unknowns. You'll have better financial data on what the need is.
Right.
Even if the projects aren't. Exactly, better defined,
Yeah.
the same question.
So the Emergency Services Building Committee continues to meet pretty much. We, you know, sometimes every 2 weeks, so they met last week. They decided to do another air test at Station 13. Which they did, this Monday, I think. They expect that report to be back probably early next week. Bottom line is, even though almost everything's been removed from that station, it does continue to be a long air quality issue there. And if there is, that's some effects on moving forward, if there's no clear fix to it.
You guys, I don't believe have gotten too far in advancing. Future priorities or, you know, major replacement projects at all yet, right? Yeah, so like, I guess what I'm trying to get at is.
Not just.
I'm very concerned about the $11.5 million number not being enough for what, you know, is currently on the table, personally, just from my own. Knowledge set, but. What would be beneficial is if there was a way to. Order of magnitude with more accuracy, you know, if the board gets to a point where we have data. That is more than just. We pulled the lowest of 5 numbers off of a single plan sketch and said this is what the project's gonna cost, you know, and that's what drove the 11.5 placeholder we have now, you know. You have funding now, you anticipate getting to a point where we're gonna have, you know, you're gonna get some help. Assistance for order of magnitude budgeting, you know, understanding, you're a ways away, I'm just. Are we gonna see it this season, or is it gonna, you know, realistically be a part of next year's plan with any accuracy?
I don't, Andy Marcos, the chairman of that committee. I think, you know, the recording's online for that committee.
I believe so, yes. I haven't checked. I
don't want.
I watch enough meetings that I.
Yeah.
I don't wanna watch it.
The advantage of living in your car, so that's, spend a lot of time just background.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
All right. So I think that we have an action plan. And unless we have something more concrete, they wanna shut off our computers. I got a text from Kevin saying he's remotely gonna shut down all the computers in our building.
Like right now.
It was as soon as I,
Oh, well.
the sooner the better. He's waiting till I text him and say, go,
Oh,
so that we don't cut off this meeting, but he's sitting at his computer waiting for us to do.
oh, okay, for like a some.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm good.
okay, I'm good.
Yeah, President, speak on the agenda.
But I think that, so I think the action item, as I understand is you're gonna send out a document saying, what are your questions?
Yes, first I'm
And,
gonna send it to all of you and say,
Right.
send me what you
Right,
think we should be asking.
And then you will
get back
draft
to
the
you 2
document.
weeks. Then I'm gonna draft something to present back to you all.
Mhm.
Then we'll come up with a plan of how we're gonna disseminate it and set the deadlines and all that stuff.
Sounds good.
Phil, who's Rusty?
Rusty's the main person at QA.
Okay, thanks.
He's the primary, who could also probably do your rough order of magnitude for firehouse.
So we, present to speak?
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna ask if Melissa or Karen Ann had anything.
They're not there anymore.
They're not, okay.
I think for the next agenda, we still need to keep, project status updates in there, because we haven't touched on too many of them.
Right, right, yeah, we didn't get far. Yeah, this is, right, there's not much.
Alyssa's back.
So that brings us to present to speak, Pete, did you have anything to say?
Hi, Peter Lieutenant, 97 Travis Road, good to see you all. I'm glad that CIP is getting an early start. It's unusual, but good. I have to comment, though, that I'm concerned when I hear statements like will compel projects or responsible people should be making certain decisions for the collective good. I think it's important for, this is my comment, CIP to do its job, prioritize projects, but ultimately you're an advisory board to the board of selectmen. And you should present a plan to the board of selectmen, who should then take up that plan. I don't think it's your task to carry out the plan. I think it's your task to present it to the board of selectmen, who interact with the board of finance, themselves, other boards, even planning and zoning, and the whole discussion about the plan of conservation and development. So I'm sensing you're overreaching a bit. And I think that's reflected in the budget process. I encourage you to send it to Pete and have Pete take up what recommendations your committee is making. Historically, that's how large projects have worked in this town. Board of Selectmen got behind the library project, or when we did the school additions, or the River Road ball field. You guys compelling anything is not a good idea. Thank you.
If I may. I would welcome anyone who is interested to go back and review the tape. I was talking about compelling groups, committees, board of selectmen, board of finance, and our group to get together to discuss these very important issues. I feel like it is important for us to be a catalyst for things that are going to need to be done in the future. And if it needs to start in our committee, then that's where it needs to start. For folks who are interested in the good of Wellington and now and in the future, and having a place that we look back on and say, we did this, we fixed this, we took care of the stuff that we needed to take care of. That to me is the priority. And
Not to make discussion out of it, but it's also the charge of this committee. Literally the.
I mean, I guess it's up for debate, I don't know.
No, it's the charge of the committee, if you read it.
It's like, yes, we are an advisory committee, and ultimately we will pass along
Recommend
advice,
plan.
but I don't think it's defined what that advice can or should be. It's a, you know, maybe we can come up with this 100-page beautiful document that we give you the slides, and they can throw it out. But
Right,
We need-
but that's why we
we
want.
need to do our due diligence, and I don't think Pete has enough hours a day. Speaking of you, do you wanna write this thing from scratch?
Yeah, there's
You
just
can't do it in
myriad, this
isolation.
huge amount of detail that no one else is dealing with, right? So I think it's a pretty clear role.
Yeah, we're present to speak.
All right,
Any other present to speak comments? All right, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
so moved.
You can't.
Yeah, you're ex officio.
Oh.
I thought I could make a motion still, as ex officio.
Move to adjourn.
Is there a second? All in favor?
I may not be able to,
I don't know if we can.
but when it comes to moving to adjourn, I'm always there for you.
I know, it's your strongest action.
All right, don't forget to text,
Oh, yeah.
I'm
I forgot.
Alexa.
Oh, yeah,
Thanks for coming.
text Kevin and say we're good, as soon as we.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can't bring friend.
The music in your phone.
I got it.